It was a quiet, windless night in a cloudless sky. Through the crowns of the forest trees, every star could be seen. Suddenly, the silence was cut by noisy breathing and the sound of footsteps. A girl ran, clicking her little heels in the middle of the forest. It was Lucina. She looked back at her pursuers. Blonde hair fluttered. She lightly held the hem of her dress with her hands so as not to get entangled in it. There were tears in my eyes, and on the light skin of the left cheek a bright mark of a slap was visible. The face expressed despair and fear at the same time. She could not get the scenes of bullying and humiliation out of her head. Lucina replayed in her head how Lord Barrick's wife had just abused her. She called her a non-entity and compared her to her mother. The girl recalled how Lady Barrick hit her in the face and called her a dirty degenerate for allegedly addressing her in some way. Lucina stopped and sat down on the ground holding her cheek. She was overcome with memories of the crowd discussing that she was the illegitimate child of Lord Barrick, and they said that everyone in the entertainment district knew her mother. The girl sat on the cold ground, remembering past grievances and hardships. The poor man's cheek began to hurt more and more. This is what was most worrying her at the moment. The blonde thought about how to heal her wounds. Tears slowly flowed from her misty white eyes. The girl heard the crackle of fire behind her. She turned around hesitantly and walked towards the source of the flame. The blonde noticed that all the plants in this part of the forest had dried out and died. She gently touched the branches of a massive tree. The leaf crumbled at lightning speed, scattering its particles in the wind. The blonde felt intense heat and assumed that she had walked into the epicenter of a fire. The girl was amazed by the massive body of the dragon. The healer noticed that bloody streaks were visible on the animal's body. Huge amber eyes opened and the monster stared at the girl. The little girl, pointing her finger at the wounded wing, asked if he needed help. The healer explained to the beast that everything would be fine with him. She promised that he would feel much better. Lucina gently touched her wings, torn by wounds, with her small hands. The healer made an effort and the wounds began to slowly heal. The girl realized that the wound was too large, and she would have to use a large amount of energy. Without fear, she crouched next to the huge, scaly body of the dragon. The lizard lay motionless on the ground and did not dare to resist. The healer intended to save him from suffering, since she herself knew firsthand how painful it could be. The girl tried her best to heal him, but soon, exhausted, she collapsed on the cold ground. The lizard looked at her carefully but did not dare to touch her. The dragon looked carefully into the blue sky, wanting to soar again to the stars and feel the refreshing streams of wind under his wings. The fire slowly consumed the dry trees behind. The dragon's silhouette began to slowly shrink, turning into a human. The werewolf carefully approached the girl and sat down next to her fragile body. He looked carefully at his savior. The brunette was amazed at her courage. Opening her eyes, the baby could not understand what kind of voice she heard. The werewolf carefully picked her up. The guy carefully pressed his savior to his chest. The blonde looked at her reflection in the mirror in surprise. The woman was carefully combing the girl's hair. She suggested that the dye was too strong, and she realized that her face was in complete disarray. Laughing, the brunettes discussed that there was more sulfur in that one than usual. The girl asked what the difference was, and noticed that the makeup turned out pretty good. The mocking brunette recalled that the king was crazy about golden hair, and she was his concubine. The maid told her friend that His Highness did not have many concubines left, since he killed the girls when they got tired of them. The blonde realized that she would be given to the old king as soon as she turned 20. The girl realized that she should have escaped that day 10 years ago. The concubine remembered that after she met the wounded dragon, she lost consciousness. The maid suggested that her colleague cover the girl's face with makeup, as the mistress ordered them. She assumed that on the way to the capital it would smooth out. The mistress told the blonde that her face would still remain ugly. The brown-haired woman suggested that the king might be disappointed, because the girl was the daughter of a beautiful bitch. Approaching his mother, the guy said with a grin that he had prepared a very big gift for her. The servants brought a huge chest to the mistress. The woman looked with admiration at the mahogany chest with gold frames. The suitcase was filled with gold coins, silver coins, and precious stones. The brown-haired woman enthusiastically asked her son where he got all this from. The guy proudly said that the dark magician told him that there was a lot of gold in the graves near the border of Tyler. With horror in her eyes, the brown-haired woman asked if those dragon people had robbed Tyler. The woman suggested that her son entered the tomb where they buried their ancestors. The brown-haired woman called the guy a fool. She was furious that he dared to interfere in the affairs of the Tyarets and their ancestors. The woman's face was covered in cold sweat. Soon the walls of the luxurious house shook. The ceiling began to crumble like small stones onto the impudent man. The blonde looked out the window. Mighty dragons soared in the night sky, lighting fires in the gardens of the estates. The blue flames mercilessly consumed the knights. Soon the door could not withstand the pressure and a small piece of wood broke off. The brunette tightly grasped the reins of the horse and led the people behind her. The knights, drowning in hellfire and experiencing torment, reported that the people of Tyareti were advancing. The guy's face was hidden behind a massive mask, the metal reflecting luxurious dragon scales. A muscular body was visible from under the armor. Burning boulders with the help of a catapult quickly destroyed the estate. The black horse raced towards the entrance to the castle. The knight, forgetting about his duties, begged for mercy. The crackling of the fire mixed with screams and the smell of burning with fear. The flames tried to rise to the stars, slowly dropping their sparks. A guy with blood-red eyes struck down one of the knights with his massive axe. Malice shone in his eyes. The blonde watched everything that was happening. She saw something painfully familiar in the bloody master. When he glanced at her, she crouched down, trying to hide, and covered her mouth with her hands. Taking off his massive mask, the brunette asked to burn everyone who dared to disgrace the honor of Manhwa-Hub. The monsters spewed flames, causing panic and death. The defeated knights lay near the walls of the estate. One of the guys ran up to the lady, and in a voice trembling with panic, said that the walls had begun to fall. The guy assumed that the enemies were trying to completely destroy them. Without hesitation, the brown-haired woman announced that it was time to give up and wave the white flag. The lady ordered the knight not to hesitate. There was hope in the blonde's heart that she could take this chance and try to escape. The girl lifted the hem of her luxurious dress and began to act. The healer hoped that she would have time to reach the stone tower in the north and climb over the wall. She quickly ran through the fire. A spark of hope appeared in his faded gray eyes. This time she was obliged to follow through with her desire. The bound knights knelt behind their mistress. The paving stones were covered in the blood of those who tried to resist. The brunette gave the command to the horse and it slowly approached the woman. The subjects reminded my lord that they had raised a white flag and asked what they should do next. Without hesitation, the bloody lord ordered everyone to be beheaded and hanged on the wall. He took out a shining silver axe. With trembling voices, the knights begged for mercy. They assured that their clothes were stained with the blood of their colleagues. The guys who were still alive were quickly devoured by the flames. The brown-haired woman hugged her son tightly. Kneeling down and crouching to the ground, the thief begged to spare his life and promised to return their treasure to the Tyarets. His body was trembling, and fear was visible in his brown eyes. The brunette thought it was funny that the insolent people dared to ask for mercy after insulting his entire family and history. Turning around the black horse, the bloody master ordered to burn the castle to the ground and not leave a single person alive. Clutching tightly to his mother's chest, the guy claimed that this all happened because of the dark magician. Tears slowly flowed from the brunette's eyes, and he claimed that the magician pushed him to rob Manhwa-Hub. The woman realized that she had to do at least something, because they could soon die. The brown-haired woman turned to the gentleman and said that she was ready to give him her daughter. The lady explained that King Brian personally chose her. She claimed that the girl was very important and beautiful. Turning around, the brunette asked the woman if this meant that her daughter was the woman of King Brian. A smile appeared on the lady's face, because she knew that the King of Brian and the great King of Thayer were enemies. The brown-haired girl hoped that the invader would show interest if she said that the blonde was the king's woman. Smiling, she assured that King Brian really wanted to get her daughter. The woman explained that they were just about to go up to celebrate their reunion. The king asked the woman where her daughter was. Looking around, the woman tried to figure out where her stepdaughter had gone. The blonde clutched the bars of the stairs tightly and looked around. She hurriedly went downstairs. The girl was jubilant that all the soldiers had left the gate and realized that this was her chance. She looked up, hearing the sound of luxurious wings. A massive dragon paw grabbed her by the shoulders and lifted her into the air. From a bird's eye view, the girl realized that all the soldiers had been beheaded. Her fragile silhouette was visible in the darkness of the night against the background of the moon. The blonde looked at the faces of the already dead soldiers, who had previously been her only barrier to escape. The woman peeked around the corner hesitantly. The lizard casually threw the blonde to the ground. The beauty became incredibly painful, and her snow-white robe was stained with dirt. The healer's body trembled violently when she realized that the brunette would kill her. Having looked at the girl, the king realized that there was nothing outstanding in her appearance. The brunette drew attention to her mysterious eyes, which looked like stars in the night sky. The guy had the feeling that he had already seen these eyes. Remembering the king, we returned to the night when he was seriously wounded. Then he realized that this girl was the fearless little girl who helped him 10 years ago. The brunette was amazed that the noble child lived in such a rotten place. The guy noticed her golden hair and realized that this was not the same woman at all. Looking hopefully at the conqueror, the brunette asked if he liked her daughter. And she assured that if he gave her a little time, she would send a girl to him, a little prettier. The lady assured that if he gave him a few days, she would dress her daughter beautifully enough to suit the great king. Pressing the tip to her throat, the guy said that he would give the young blonde a choice. The brunette asked if the girl was ready to become his companion, or if she wanted to be buried alive along with the rest of the inhabitants of this castle. Panic flashed in the gray eyes. The healer did not want to die, and turning gloomy, she said that she was ready to marry the conqueror. The king standing next to her asked her name. In a trembling voice, the girl called herself Lucina. Smiling, the brunette said that her name meant moon in the Bryan language. The guy noticed that this name suited the blonde perfectly. The king said that his name was Hakon. Having embraced the girl who was trembling all over, he promised to treat her well. Hakon remembered that weddings in Bryan needed a priest. The king pointed his weapon at the guy in white, and he said that he would be a priest, since he himself wanted to marry Lucina now. His face was smeared with blood, and his voice was insinuating and calm. The brunette was amazed that the king would have a wedding right on the site of their destroyed estate. The woman asked again if he was sure that he wanted to do it right here. The brunette said that after the wedding he needed a witness. Hakon asked who among those present would become it. The guy ordered a letter to be sent to their king immediately after the ceremony, informing him that he had chosen a wife for himself. Laughing, the brunette said that a decade ago he sent a dragon slayer to exterminate young species. The king said that he was now repaying the debt. There was horror in the brown-haired woman's eyes when she realized that the guy was a ruthless maniac. The woman realized that he was using Lucina to deal with King Bryan. The priest, trembling all over, began to read the wedding vow. The fire slowly consumed the walls of the temple. Smiling, Hakon said that this mess did not look like a wedding at all and asked to bring fresh flowers. The king's subordinates walked around the garden and collected a luxurious bouquet. The bodies of the young warriors were covered in blood. Small wildflowers were cut with the rough edge of an axe, which a few hours ago had taken a single life. One of the guys handed the gentleman a small bouquet of flowers. Taking it in his hands, the brunette inhaled the scent with a smile and handed it to his bride. He claimed that he knew that in their country there was a tradition that the bride should hold flowers during the wedding ceremony. The blonde extended her hands, trembling with fear. The king smiled and said that the ceremony looked much better this way. Hakon nodded towards the priest and invited him to begin the ceremony. In a trembling voice, the man said that on this glorious day, the priest's voice was uncertain and his eyes were downcast. Soon the blonde reported that the king could kiss his bride. The healer sank after these words. Noticing Lucina's confusion, the priest suggested dispensing with the kiss and immediately moving on to prayers. The brunette calmly said that he did not believe in their god. The clergyman invited the newlyweds to celebrate their dinner with a kiss. He said that after this, the ceremony was over. The conqueror's massive body loomed over the frightened girl. Brown eyes pierced her to the very tips of her fingers. Noticing her excitement, the brunette suggested that she might have fainted. Hakon asked the bride to close her eyes and gently touched her lips. The girl smelled the distinct smell of blood from her new husband, and that made her very dizzy. Soon, a delicate bouquet of flowers fell to the floor, and the girl's body collapsed unconscious. Laughing, the knight turned to the great king, and he insisted that he had to kiss the bride passionately. The guy asked why Hakon made her faint. The brunette grinned and suggested that his kiss was too much for the fragile girl to bear. The guy said that he would spare their lives, since his wife was of the same blood as them. Hakon pulled a massive hood over his head, and he warned that if they dared to approach Majaruk from Tayar, he would wipe this place off the face of the earth. The king ordered his subjects to set off. The bay horses quickly left the burning estate, leaving the woman sitting in the middle of the ruined yard. The brown-haired woman told her son that they must return Lucina. The woman recalled that she gave the girl to King Bryan for the sake of their future. She couldn't let the conqueror decorate the blonde so easily. Cold sweat slowly flowed down the guy's cheeks. The son recalled that all their knights were dead. The woman struck him with a cold look and reminded him that they could hire mercenaries. A luxurious carriage, accompanied by cavalry, rode along the road. The trees around were filled with rays of sunlight. The blonde heard a strange sound and stood up from her seat. She looked around cautiously. Smiling, one of the knights noticed that the queen had woken up. The guy told the gentleman that his wife had already gotten up. Hakan looked around and asked the girl how she slept. The brunette said that after sleep they should eat. The guy suggested stopping in the middle of the forest and having a rest. Lucina winced as the carriage door began to slowly open. The husband asked the blonde how she felt. The guy admitted that he was surprised when his bride suddenly fainted. Trembling all over, the girl assured that everything was fine with her. The king noticed that the blonde had not eaten all day and assumed that she was hungry. Lucina claimed that she did not want to eat and would rather stay in the carriage, and her eyes showed panic, and drops of cold sweat appeared on her face. Hakan suggested that his wife was too shy. The guy explained that the nights were very cold in these parts, and holding out his hand he invited her to go out and light a fire. The healer smelled the sweetish smell of food, and hesitantly extended her skinny hand to him. The knight called the gentleman to follow him. Lucina took hesitant steps standing next to the conqueror. The brunette led the couple to a tent near which a fire was burning. The king smiled and said that he was free and could go. Hakan invited the girl to sit where it was softer. The blonde enjoyed the faint warmth that came from the fire. Her husband seemed gloomy and creepy to her. The guy carefully threw a warm blanket over her fragile shoulders. The healer finally felt the warmth. Handing over a package with a sandwich, Hakan recommended that she eat it before it gets cold. The blonde sniffed the sandwich with pleasure. The girl was delighted with the bright and rich aroma, because in the palace she always ate only dry bread with mold. The brunette suggested that the wife was sure that there was poison there. The king assured that he would not have fallen so low. In a trembling voice, Lucina announced that she would soon begin the meal. The healer's eyes lit up when she tasted the fresh food. For the first time in many years, the girl tried bread with filling and other ingredients inside. The brunette asked his wife to eat more slowly, suggesting that she might choke if she was in such a hurry. The king poured some of the aromatic white drink into the cup. Hakan reported that the mug contained sheep's milk, and he assured that it was not poisoned. The girl realized that in the castle she had to run errands all day to get crackers. Lucina doubted that she deserved this delicious hot meal. The brunette asked his wife what her age was. In a trembling voice, the healer announced that she was 20 years old. Hakan asked the girl if she was too young to be the bride of the old king. With hatred in his eyes, the brunette called him a lousy madman for sending assassins to Thayer to kill innocent young dragons. The king said that in that battle he lost his brother, who was once a great king. The guy became gloomy, and said that if it weren't for the urgent need to take the throne in order to secure the country alone, he would have gotten the head of King Brian. The brunette admitted that he was wounded that day and fell in the middle of the forest. Therefore, I was unable to finish what I started. Hakan asked the girl if she regretted not becoming the wife of that old man. The blonde just shook her head negatively in response. The guy remembered that he also ordered the killing of all innocent civilians, and he assumed that from the blonde's point of view he was no different from King Brian. The healer asked where Thayer was. The king was amazed because he was sure that she would cry and ask to go home. Hakan was amazed at the calmness of his new wife. Breaking the second sandwich in half, the brunette explained that the inhabitants of Brian considered Thayer a land of barbarians, full of monsters. The king assured that this was not in fact the case. Handing over some more food, the guy assured that when they arrive, Lucina herself will understand that this is a lie. The blonde felt that with this man she would definitely be better off than in Burt Castle. Hakan asked her to be patient a little. He claimed that when they reached the palace, the wife would be able to eat the best food. The healer assured that this food was very tasty. The king was amazed because the girl belonged to the nobility of Brian. The brunette assumed that the reason his wife couldn't talk about it was because she was still afraid of him. The guy asked her to lie down in this place, and said that he would undress for now. The king lifted his cape to reveal a luxurious torso. Lucina, putting a hood over her head, said that in this case she would come out. Placing a massive hand on her fragile shoulder, the guy assured her that she didn't have to go out. The king recalled that they were now legal spouses. Smiling, the brunette said that from this day on they should sleep together. The blonde's face turned red with embarrassment. Hakan asked if in Brian the wedding night was called consummation of marriage. Lucina clutched her cape tightly in her fragile hands. There was panic in the girl's eyes. Tears began to slowly flow down our heroine's face. The brunette explained that he only asked because he didn't know. The guy assured that in Thayer people usually get married and have a wedding only after the woman becomes pregnant. The blonde was amazed because she didn't know that it was possible not to get married, but to have consummation of the marriage and become pregnant. The king gently took Lucina in his arms and asked her not to cry. The guy assured that he didn't want to see her tears and gently wiped them away with his finger. The king asked if she thought it would be better to be the wife of the old king. In a trembling voice, the blonde admitted that she was simply afraid of him. Hakan suggested that she was scared because she was separated from her family at night and dragged to a foreign country. The guy assumed that the reason for her fear was that his clan was known as barbarians. Stepping aside, the brunette assured that he would not touch her again. His body was covered with luxurious tattoos. The king asked his wife to rest, and having pulled back the canopy, he assured that he could sleep outside the tent. The moon cast its cold rays onto the treetops. Hakan approached his knights with confident steps. The guy was a little taken aback when he realized that the gentleman had abandoned his wife and came to them. The brunette sighed heavily and assured that he would sleep on the street. The knight suggested that, according to Brian's custom, they should have their wedding night. The guy assured that for this reason he erected a tent for them. Hakan explained that some barbarians dragged the girl away from her native land and gave her no rest day and night. The brunette asked if she would be happy. The knight reminded his master that he had promised to bury all of Burke's people for Majaruk. The guy reminded Hakan if it was he who originally wanted to kill her. Throwing a contemptuous look at the knight, the brunette reminded that the girl was his wife and asked him to remember this well. The guy asked the brunette, "Where did the one who didn't care about women go?" The knight recalled that for her sake he left all the inhabitants of the castle alive. Lowering his eyes, the king admitted that looking at the girl he remembered someone. Hakan said that that girl was also close to this castle. The guy explained that he wanted to repay that child by releasing the people in Burke. The knight said that the fact that he found his wife here was a good sign. The guy recalled that their king needed heirs. The king explained that creating the descendants of the dragon clan was hard work, and now he must make every effort to be closer to women. The blonde opened her eyes uncertainly. Looking around, the girl realized that it was already morning. Lucina remembered that she cried and fell asleep without even washing off her makeup. The healer was sure that her face looked terrible. She looked out of the tent and heard the sound of water nearby, and she suggested that there must be a stream nearby. The blonde headed to the water to wash herself. Looking at her reflection, she realized that the red spots had become even worse. The girl decided to be healed and remembered the words her husband said last night. Lucina decided not to be healed, assuming that he would not touch her if she looked terrible. The healer heard footsteps behind her and looked around uncertainly. A huge hand loomed over her. There was horror in the gray eyes. The barbarian said with a grin that it was easier than he expected. The guy asked his colleagues how much money Baroness Berga offered them. The brown-haired man told his colleague that they needed to hide in the forest so that the flying creatures could not find them. The kidnapper said that the Fuki forest was nearby and suggested heading in that direction. A gag was visible in the girl's mouth, and tears appeared in her eyes. She didn't want to go back to Burke. Drops of rain began to rapidly fall to the ground. The kidnapper was amazed that rain fell on them so suddenly. The mercenary explained to his colleague that if he did not present peanuts when crossing this forest, then the dwarf fairy Fuka would call for rain. The kidnapper grinned and said that in the rain it would be more difficult to track them. The blonde's body was shaking from the cold. The mercenary informed his colleague about the tremors in Lucina's body. The brown-haired man assumed that the girl was sick. The guy assured that they would have problems if she died before they got there. The kidnapper looked at the girl's face and was struck by the many red spots. The brown-haired man suggested that the barbarians had already infected the girl with smallpox. The mercenary suggested to his colleague that he drop the target in this forest. The guy admitted that he didn't want to get sick and die for a few pennies. The arrow pierced the brown-haired man's neck with lightning speed, causing him to fall off his horse. Blood quickly flooded the forest clearing. The kidnappers looked at their attackers in horror. The knight bravely killed the mercenary with an arrow. Holding the blade tightly in his hand, the kidnapper ordered them not to approach. The guy said that if they came any closer, he would kill the girl. Having become gloomy, Hakan asked his wife to close her eyes. The obedient girl complied with this request. The brunette cut off the kidnapper's head with a slight movement of his hand. The bald head rolled across the clearing, leaving bloody stains behind it. The king asked Lucina if everything was okay with her. The husband noticed that her fragile body was trembling violently. The girl realized that Hakon's face was covered in blood, just like the time she first saw him. The healer was amazed that this time she felt relief and not fear. The king, with concern in his voice, asked his beloved if everything was all right with her. He carefully pulled the gag out of her mouth. The girl's face was disfigured with bruises and bloodstains. Hakan carefully took her off the horse and, with a deft movement of his hand, cut the rope that tied her hands. The brunette carefully threw a cape over his wife. Hakan touched her forehead. He then realized that the blonde had a high fever. The husband explained to the girl that as soon as he noticed she was missing, he immediately followed. The king assumed that he was late. The brunette asked for forgiveness that his beloved was very frightened. Hakan began to gently stroke her silky hair, trying to calm her down. Pressing him tightly, the healer assured him that everything was fine now. The guy explained that the rain would stop as soon as they left this forest and asked them to be patient for a while. The king took Lucina in his arms and carried her with ease. The brunette ordered his subjects to light a fire after leaving the forest, so that his wife could dry herself and warm up. The guy asked for clothes to change and clean water so she could wash herself. A barely noticeable smile appeared on the healer's face. Lucina was happy she didn't return to Burke. At that moment, the girl realized that she wanted to stay with her husband. Cold moonlight barely penetrated through the thick crowns of trees. In the silence of the night, the faint crackle of a fire could be heard. Sitting in a tent by a hot fire, the blonde realized that her clothes were completely covered in bloodstains. She looked at her reflection in the metal mug. She realized that the rash was getting worse and realized that she really looked sick. Lucina wondered if she could just heal. The girl doubted because her husband could drag her into bed. The blonde suggested that everything would be fine if she slept next to him. The healer barely touched her cheek, but the little creature advised her not to heal. Raising her huge emerald eyes, the creature announced that she was the fairy of this forest. Lucina remembered that Fuka was a short person who made it rain if she didn't get peanuts. Offended, the fairy said that she was tall. Fuka noticed that the queen spoke better than he expected, because she had been silent the previous day. The girl was a little taken aback, assuming that he had been following her since yesterday. The blonde admitted that it was the first time he had seen such energy in the lands of Tayaro. The fairy clarified whether she had healing powers. Confused, Lucina asked how he found out about this. The blonde explained that this was due to the fact that he was a fairy. Fuka assured that she couldn't just use the healing power. Faye warned that if the girl was caught, she would be in great danger. The creature explained that this was a very rare ability, and all the tribes were eager to get it. Fuka warned that if they found out that she had healing powers, they would gather around her like ants. The healer promised to be careful and thanked her for the warning. The blonde noticed that the queen could speak perfectly and asked why she was silent there in the morning. Lucina shared that she couldn't say anything in front of other people because she was scared. The girl said that when she spoke, everyone got angry and beat her. The blonde insisted that she didn't actually say what she wanted. Faye reassured him, assuring him that he was not human. Smiling, the blonde explained that people were angry when she spoke. With burning eyes, the healer said that she had previously met a dragon, and it was very large. Lucina said that he had damaged his wings and was bleeding, but she healed him with her power. The girl admitted that she wanted to talk to the dragon, but lost consciousness. Having opened the entrance to the tent, Hakan asked if he could enter. Smiling, Fuka said that he had to go and promised that they would meet again. Soon, the blonde quickly fluttered out of the small tent. Entering the tent, the king said that he did not have anything decent for his dear wife to change into. The darkened brunette asked Lucina what happened to her beautiful face. Covering the spots with her hands, the girl explained that she had a fever. The brunette asked if these spots appeared on her because of the fever and asked if she was sick. The king ordered Turan to move and call the doctor. Looking into the tent, the guy asked what happened. The knight clarified whether the girl felt bad. Turan grabbed the gentleman by the hand and told him that the girl was sick with smallpox. The knight explained that the whole of Tayar suffered from this disease, which recently came from the lands of Brian. The guy assured that there were the same symptoms. Lucina reported that this was the action of hydrogen sulfide. After a little hesitation, the girl explained that she was only showing symptoms of hives. Turan warned the queen that she should not come closer, since her illness was contagious. Lucina assured that it was not contagious and that was not what she meant. The girl felt that she could not say a word again because of her excitement. Holding the dagger tightly, the knight brought it to the blonde's face and ordered her not to come closer. The workers began to whisper that the king's bride had smallpox. The people were unhappy that the woman Brianna brought the plague to the Tayar lands. The brunette stopped Turan and asked him to lower his sword. The guy explained that they could not say that it was a contagious disease. Looking closely at his wife, the king asked what she was trying to say. In a trembling voice, the blonde explained that she had recently dyed her hair. The girl assured that the paint was made from hydrogen sulfide. And after a short silence, she clarified that the crocus juice was a hair dye. The healer assured that because of the rain, her temperature rose and her face turned red. Gritting his teeth tightly, the knight assumed that all her words were madness due to the fever. Looking down, the girl realized that the more nervous she was, the more confused she was with her words. The memories took Lucina many years ago when her stepmother beat her. The maids chuckled and did not understand what the point was in looking for an excuse if she was beaten anyway. The brunette assured that if she were the girl, she would simply shut up. Looking down, Lucina realized that in her case she couldn't even explain herself properly. The knight continued to try to prove to his highness that it was smallpox, and they could not take this woman into the palace. Turan suggested that the master burn the girl and everything she touched. Otherwise, their lands could be in great danger. The knight recalled that it was the blood of a man who had insulted Medjenk Tayarsky. The people assured that they could not allow the girl to live. Lucina realized with horror that if this continued, she would soon die. The girl decided to cure her rash with healing powers. The healer remembered the fairy's words. A shadow of doubt and deep despair appeared in the blonde's heart. Hakan noticed the fear in his beloved's eyes. He asked his wife to calm down and speak more clearly. The guy promised to listen to her until he could understand and figure it out. The knight warned his master that it was dangerous to talk for a long time with a patient suffering from smallpox. Turning to Turan, the king assured that it was not smallpox. He explained that the infection rash spread when the temperature dropped. The brunette recalled that the fever and rash did not appear at the same time, as in Lucina's case. A little taken aback, he agreed with the gentleman's opinion. The guy assured that with smallpox it is impossible to eat normally because of the rash in the mouth and nausea. Hakan noticed that, however, the girl had an excellent appetite. The king noticed that the symptoms that were observed in his beloved did not resemble the symptoms of smallpox. The king asked the blonde what she was talking about earlier. The brunette remembered that she had said something about hydrogen sulfide and dyes. The guy asked her to speak without fear, assuring her that no one would be angry with her. Lucina tried to explain that she had been dyed yellow with hydrogen sulfide. Only fragments of phrases came out of the girl's mouth. The king suggested that his bride made hair dye from sulfur to dye her hair blonde. Lucina anxiously tried to explain that her mother ordered her hair to be dyed because the old king liked that color. The guy, despite her inaudible babble, realized that she had dyed her hair because the king of Bryan liked blondes. Hakan clarified whether the rash on her forehead appeared because of this. The brunette was sincerely surprised that his wife's hair color was not natural. He quickly realized that the rash was due to the toxicity of the dye. Deciding to prove that he was right, the king put his hand on her head and lifted her hair. The guy asked Turan to take a look, because the rash was mainly located near the head and forehead. Gently stroking his wife's head, the guy explained that the rash that initially appeared had become brighter because the temperature had risen in the rain. Hakan asked the girl if his statement was true. Returning the sword to its sheath, the brunette said that due to toxicity, sulfur could actually cause such symptoms if it got on the skin. The king explained that if his wife had smallpox, he should have become infected after kissing and touching her. The guy explained that in this case, everyone who drank with him could become infected. In a trembling voice, the knight said to be sure that he did not have smallpox. The people reported that they believed His Highness's version. The spark of hope returned in the blonde's eyes again, because no one had ever listened to her so carefully. Lucina clearly remembered that when she tried to say something, everyone got angry or laughed at her, without even trying to understand or listen. Carefully placing his hand on her fragile shoulders, the brunette suggested returning to the tent. Hakan said that because of the temperature, she should lie down in a warm place. A few moments later, the knight entered the tent and announced that they had received a confession from the kidnappers. Covering the girl's legs, the king assumed that the knight had forced the kidnappers to open their mouths. With rage in his eyes, he said that they acted on the orders of the Baroness. Brown suggested that the woman was trying to get her daughter back. Hakan realized that he spared the woman for the sake of the bride. The brunette was shocked that she had such a low opinion of the Tayars. Without hesitation, the guy ordered at that very moment to return and burn all the people in the castle to teach a lesson. Gently touching her husband's shoulder, Lucina clarified. The guy said that he was very sorry that her family would not be an exception. Hakan said that he was fed up with the fact that they insulted the Tayar people and dared to touch the king's bride. Lucina agreed that he was right, and she explained that she was against the killing of innocent citizens. The guy was amazed that his wife did not try to save her family. Hakan asked in surprise whether it mattered to her if her mother and brother died. The girl understood that the Baroness was not her biological mother. She doubted whether she should say that she was an illegitimate child. The girl remembered how the maids humiliated her for being the daughter of a famous woman from the entertainment district. The blonde did not want to come back again and decided to pretend to be a real daughter. Falling to her knees, the girl begged not to kill her mother and brother, and she assured that they were her precious family. Stretching out his hand, the guy asked her to stand up, explaining that she shouldn't have sat on the cold floor. Choking with excitement, Lucina said that if he saves the lives of her family, then she... But the girl was not allowed to finish. Having interrupted his wife, the guy asked what he would get in return. Grinning, the brunette explained that he could not forgive those who dared to encroach on his bride. The guy asked what the newly made wife would do if he saved the life of her family. The blonde assured that she would do whatever His Highness wished. The king realized that looking into her eyes, he could not stop thinking about that child. Hakan understood that he could not torment his sick bride. The brunette asked the girl if she was ready to do whatever he wanted. Smiling, the guy asked to kiss him. The healer was a little taken aback by this proposal. Hakan recalled that she said that she would do whatever he wanted. The king explained that he wanted to receive a kiss from his bride. The girl raised her head uncertainly and reached for his lips. After a passionate kiss, the brunette hugged his wife tightly to him. Hakan asked to convey his order to the dragons so that they cut off the heads of the mercenaries and send them to Berk. The guy asked to burn them in the presence of all the people of the castle and convey his words. In a voice trembling with rage, the king said that if anyone touched his bride again, all residents would face the same fate. Hakan said that he would leave the tent as soon as his beloved's temperature dropped a little. The guy asked to prepare antipyretic and easily digestible food for her. Sitting at her bedside, the brunette assured that he would guard the tent outside that night. The king asked the girl not to worry about anything. Looking at him with embarrassed eyes, the healer thanked him for his concern. The brunette said that in this case he would expect another kiss as a sign of gratitude. Confusion appeared on Lucina's face. The husband told the girl that he was just joking and promised not to bother her anymore. The healer tried to understand why the guy looked so happy. She was sure her face looked terrible because of the rash. The king placed a wet napkin on his wife's forehead. The girl hesitantly lifted a piece of cloth and looked at her husband in surprise. She couldn't understand why this man was so strange. Massive horses quickly pulled the carriage forward. The blonde enthusiastically stuck her head out of the window, watching the luxurious scenery. Her soft hair was ruffled by the light wind. Soon the carriage arrived at the Tayar Palace. The healer was surprised, because in Brian they said that the inhabitants of Tayar were ill-mannered people living in huts or caves. Having opened the doors of the carriage, Turan told the girl that she could get out. The knight carefully gave the girl his hand, helping her out of the carriage. The queen breathed in the fresh air. She smelled a mixture of nutmeg and sulfide. The healer felt a little dizzy and assumed it was because she kept inhaling the scent. Touching her hand, Hakan clarified whether she felt dizzy. He assured that people with earth energy needed time to adapt to the smell of Tairan, since it had strong fire energy. Lowering her eyes, the blonde assured that everything was fine. Lucina couldn't understand why she felt relieved when she was next to her husband. The brunette offered her a tour of the Tairan castle. The girl noticed that her husband's estate was very different from what she had heard before. The guy explained that Brian did not recognize the various tribes of Tairan. The king explained that despite its advanced civilization, his state was not recognized as a kingdom. The brunette was sure that Tairan was the most beautiful and richest place on this continent. The queen looked at the property with admiration, suggesting that she would live in these places. The guy with a grin offered his wife a tour of the palace. The people gathered in luxurious courtyards and rejoiced at the return of His Highness. People were discussing the girl who was next to the king. Quite quickly they noticed that she looked like a man from Brian, and also looked sickly. The blonde felt embarrassed and thought again about healing the rash. The queen noticed that the male nobles and hunters looked the same, but the maids were different. A dark-skinned man with a dragon skull on his head greeted His Highness. Smiling, Hakan turned to the high priest. The blonde looked at the short man with surprise, noticing that he was very different from the priests of Brian. Taking a closer look at the new queen, the man noticed that Hakan had brought the energy of the earth. The priest dipped his thin hand into a huge bowl of cool sacred water. The man's face was thin and covered with many wrinkles. Lucina felt scared and tried to hide behind her husband's massive back. Smiling, the king assured the girl that it was just a ritual of cleansing from failure after a foreign land. Brunette said that the people of Tehran believed that after returning to their native lands, thanks to the feeling of holy water, evil spirits leave their body and soul. The guy assured that it was just a greeting, and that no one would try to harm her. Hakan argued that the girl should not have been afraid. After the priest's touch, the girl's heart sank. The blonde felt the rash slowly go away after the holy water touched her body. The man said that they had completed the purification ceremony and suggested they go to the main palace. The king smiled and praised the priest for his excellent work. The healer entered the palace and was delighted that gold was everywhere she looked. The brunette opened his arms, turning to his highness, and fell to his chest. The girl assured that she was incredibly glad that he returned safe and sound. The brunette clarified whether he showed the pathetic villain Brian the greatness of their people. Embarrassed, the girl gently ran her finger over his hand. Lucina noticed that the woman was very beautiful and looked like a queen. The king thanked Greta for her concern. The girl assured that she was not worried because she considered it impossible for him to lose. The brunette suggested that the girl who was next to the gentleman was his trophy. Greta assured that all Brian's women were dirty and advised the girl to wash herself. The king told the girl that the blonde was his bride from Burke. The guy explained that the place of the mistress of the palace could not remain empty forever. Hakan assured that if Lucina gives birth to a child, he will make her queen. The darkened brunette clarified whether his highness was serious. Greta asked if he knew that yellow mucus was coming out of the girl's body. The brunette asked his wife if she was wounded. The healer realized that the dye had begun to wash out of her hair due to the holy water. The blonde assured that it was not slime but simple paint, and that there was no need to worry. Greta said that she was not worried about her, but about his highness. The brown-haired woman asked whether she could cope with all the responsibilities that would be transferred to her. Looking at her husband in surprise, Lucina asked what her responsibilities were. The brunette advised her to go and change clothes. The king asked Greta to give his bride a personal maid. The brown-haired woman asked Titi to take the girl to the Star Palace. Having bowed, she accepted the order of Queen Song. With a bow, the servant girl asked the blonde to follow her. The healer suggested that this person was the wife of Hakon's older brother, who died many years ago. Lucina noticed that they looked quite close. In the dull eyes, hope began to slowly fade. Bowing, Titi introduced herself, explaining that from now on she would serve her highness. Confused, the blonde asked the girl to take care of her. The maid said that the queen should not speak to her so formally. Looking around, the blonde asked if this place was her room. Titi explained that Lady Lucina had not yet given birth to an heir to the king and could not be in the main royal palace. The maid argued that she could get married and become the rightful queen only after fulfilling her duty by giving birth to an heir to his highness. Lucina realized what her responsibilities were. The brown-haired woman asked the lady if she could help her change clothes. Titi was surprised that the mistress's clothes were dirty. The healer explained that her dress was stained with paint and began to wash off. The girl was amazed that after the holy water touched her, the paint began to dissolve and the rash on her face went away a little. The blonde asked if she could still get the water that was standing before the exit. The maid asked the mistress for permission to go and clarify this issue. A small green bird flew into the room. Lucina was a little taken aback when she heard that the titmouse could talk. Having returned to his appearance, the fairies explained that it was him. The girl was surprised that Fuka was following her. The creature asked if she followed his advice, and he assured that it was safer to use holy water instead of force. Smiling, she thanked her for the message. The girl asked if he liked peanuts. She promised to ask Titi later if there were peanuts here. Lucina asked the blonde what kind of peanut he preferred. The girl admitted that she liked Tayar. The healer was delighted that during her stay in this state no one had ever hit her, and her husband took good care of her. Faye asked the girl if she was afraid to give birth to Hakon's child. Lucina admitted that she was a little worried about this, and she explained that they were married and therefore were one. The girl realized that it was natural that she should spend her wedding night with Hakon. Titi informed the lady that she had received permission to use the holy water. The brown-haired woman asked to follow her. Turan came with a report to his highness. He reported that the dragons had returned from Burke. The king asked whether they followed his orders. The knight reported that the Baroness and her son were very frightened. The guy clarified whether his highness was ready to forgive the Burkes, despite many things. Turan recalled that 10 years ago they sent mercenaries to destroy the sailors. The knight recalled that even King's son could not take revenge on Brian for the murder of the previous king. The guy admitted that he was allegedly afraid that Brian's people would look down on the Tayar people. The darkened brunette assured that he would not let them get away with this. Hakan said that before this the guy should have known something. The brunette recalled that a decade ago he fell after being hit by a black arrow while chasing the killers of his older brother. The knight asked how he could forget that terrible day. Hakan claimed that the girl who saved his life was from Burke. The king assured that if it were not for that child, he would never have returned to Tayar. Turan recalled that he said that the baby was about 10 years old. The knight assumed that she had become an adult girl. The guy said that she might still be living in Burke. The brunette said that he was ready to kill all the people, but save the life of this child. Turan reminded the master that she was a person with rare healing powers and leaving her alive. It can be very useful. The brunette asked why the king did not take that child that day. The guy was sure that her healing abilities could greatly help Tayar. Hakan asked if he offered to kidnap the child who saved his life. The king asked whether this could be considered an adequate gesture of gratitude. The brunette said that there were many scars on the baby's face, and suggested that she was the daughter of a commoner or a serf. Hakan always remembered her silver hair and deep eyes. The king said that before attacking Burke, it was necessary to find out the whereabouts of this girl. Hakan asked to find out whether his wife was the Baroness's own daughter. The brunette noticed that for an aristocrat, she was very intimidated and had little connection with her family. The guy asked to find out what the girl's childhood was like. Turan asked the gentleman if he thought that the Baroness could deceive them. The knight suggested that that vile woman could have done this. Bowing, the guy promised to find out. The king said that he needed to wash himself. Hakan explained that he was going to the bathhouse and did not need an escort. The knight wanted to say something, but after a few moments he hesitated. The king asked the guy if he had said anything. The toxic dye was slowly being washed out of Lucina's luxurious silver hair. The girl breathed in the air with pleasure. The blonde's body was surrounded by many delicate pink petals. The healer was pleased that the hair dye was washed off and the rash on her face disappeared. The girl was delighted that her skin became softer and smoother than before. She heard the distinct sounds of footsteps behind her and became alert. Looking around, Lucina saw her husband. The girl covered her mouth with her hands. The king was wearing only a light robe. Hakan slowly took off his clothes and entered the bathhouse. The healer didn't know what to do because she couldn't just leave. The blonde covered her breasts with her hands and tried to make sure her husband didn't notice her. She hid behind a small fountain from which hot water was slowly pouring out. Hakan turned around when he heard a splash of water behind him. The guy noticed her silver hair and asked who was in the bath besides him. The healer clasped her hands tightly over her mouth, trying to hide the sounds of her breathing. The king irritably recalled that he had said that he supposedly did not need to be accompanied. The brunette menacingly asked who dared to come to the bathhouse willfully. The healer didn't know what to do because she wasn't wearing any clothes. The young man assumed that Turan ordered the maids to seduce him. The king was tired of hearing that he should be close to women, so he brought a bride. The brunette suggested that Turan was again slipping other women to him. The king did not intend to leave it that easily. The guy asked on whose orders she came to this place. Lucina did not understand what to do, and realized that at this rate they would collide with each other. The blonde decided to hide by going under the water. Small air bubbles came out of her mouth. The guy asked the uninvited guest if she thought that if she hid he would pass by. The blonde hesitantly opened her eyes and realized what was at the level of his groin. The healer decided to leave without emerging from the water. Hakan asked how she could boldly run away from him. The king roughly grabbed her hand, asking where she was going to go. Having lost her balance, the blonde began to fall. Hakan grabbed her abruptly, preventing her from getting injured. The brunette asked her to tell Turan if he did something like that again. But then he saw the girl. The guy could not understand who this beautiful person was. The king realized that he saw these deep eyes that were like moonlight. A little taken aback, Hakan asked if the girl was his fiancée. The guy was amazed that Lucina's natural hair color was silver. The king realized that when the paint came off, she really looked like the girl who had saved his life a decade ago. Lost in thought, the brunette realized that his bride was also 20 years old. The healer trembled when she noticed Hakan's serious face. The girl thought that she might be beaten. In a trembling voice, the blonde said that she was wrong and asked not to hit her. The husband asked the girl what she did wrong. Lucina, on her knees, begged him not to beat her and said that she was ready to carry out any of his orders. Throwing on a robe, the king said that no one was going to beat her. The guy asked if anyone in his palace could dare to raise a hand against the bride. A little taken aback, the healer clarified whether her husband would punish her. Lucina was happy because she was sure that she would be beaten for this. The guy asked why his wife was in the bathhouse. The blonde reported that she washed her face with holy water. The king realized why the maid asked permission to use holy water. Hakan assured that there was nothing wrong with this. Confused in her words, the girl asked if he got angry when he saw her. The brunette explained that he was angry only because he thought that the maids allegedly disobeyed his orders. The king explained that he expected to see an escort, not her. Gently stroking her cheeks, the brunette asked for forgiveness for scaring her. Lucina timidly assured that everything was fine with her. Having embraced the blonde, Hakan reminded him that if she gave birth to a child, she would become the mistress of this palace. The guy asked not to make such a scared face. The king said that he wanted his wife to manage the palace with dignity. Lowering her eyes, the girl once again asked for forgiveness. Hakan reminded her that he ordered her not to apologize. The brunette realized that 10 years ago his savior was very brave and fearless, and was not even afraid when she saw the dragon right in front of her. The king assumed that the girls were simply similar. Hakan realized that the baby did not look like a person of high status. The guy realized that if Lucina had healing powers, she could cure the rash on her face and no one would blame her for an infectious disease. In a trembling voice, the wife told the guy that she would go. The healer was uncomfortable that he was too close to her. Gently taking a strand of her hair, Hakan asked where she was going. The guy hugged her tightly and assumed that she had not finished washing yet. Embarrassed, Lucina assured that she had already finished the bath procedures. The brunette suggested in that case they should go together. He gently picked up her fragile body in his arms. Blushing with embarrassment, the girl asked where they would go. Smiling, the king said that he would now take her to his bedroom. Smiling, Hakan asked if the spouses should share one bed. The brunette asked what his wife thought about this. He felt a slight trembling that passed through his wife's body. Hakan asked with surprise whether she was afraid of him. The star-studded sky stretched over the luxurious possessions of the king. In each of the buildings, bright warm light poured from the windows. The maids carefully combed Lucina's hair. Titi noticed that the lady looked very beautiful when the yellow paint was washed off. The brown-haired woman assured that the girl would be loved by the king. Yawning, the brunette said that she was a little worried, noticing that the mistress was too skinny. The red-haired girl doubted whether she could withstand this fragile body of the blonde. Excitedly, Lucina asked what she had to endure. The brunette asked if she knew why the king did not get close to women. The girl suggested that the bride might die after the first night with his highness. Fear appeared in the healer's eyes and she asked why she risked dying. Exhaling, the brunette asked if the lady could cope with the increase in the dragon. Gently taking the girl by the hand, the brown-haired woman assured that the mistress could handle everything. Titi took the lady by the hand and led her out of the room, assuring her that she could give birth to a beautiful baby and become a queen. Fear appeared in the blonde's eyes and she assumed that Hakan had beaten her in bed. The girl entered the king's room with uncertain steps. The brunette was holding a glass of red wine from which he took a few sips. Hakan glanced at his beloved. The bride, coming closer, was very embarrassed. The blonde's face was covered with a bright blush, and her moon-colored eyes were lowered to the floor. The guy assured that she looked great. Hakan ordered the bride to come closer to him. The healer hesitantly took a few steps towards her husband, gently taking a strand of silver hair in his hand. The king said that he could not believe that you hid such beautiful hair under such terrible dye. Lucina was amazed because this was the first time she had been told that this was her attractive feature. Bringing her closer, the king asked if she would lose consciousness if he kissed her. The girl nodded her head negatively. The brunette gently kissed the healer's lips. Lucina was amazed that the kiss was soft and warm. She looked at his body with admiration, with intricate patterns. The king asked if she was interested in the tattoo. The guy explained that this is an engraved pattern of the tribe in which he was born. Hakan gently took his wife's hand and placed it on his strong chest. The guy assured that there was nothing to be afraid of. The healer was amazed because his body was like a rock. The brunette asked if Lucina was ready to spend the night with him instead of running away. The groom gently took her in his arms and laid her on his huge bed. Confusion appeared on the blonde's face and she covered her chest with her hands. With a shudder, Lucina remembered what the maids had said before she went to His Highness's room. Looking at the muscular arms, the blonde wondered if she could survive if he hit her with one hand. A slight tremor passed through the healer's body because she did not want to die. Hakan rose from the bed and sat down on its edge. The girl assumed that her husband was strong. The king assured that he was not angry. The brunette asked if the bride wanted to return to Burke. The king assured that he asked this in all seriousness. The healer gave a negative answer. The girl understood that she never wanted to return to the Baroness's estate. The blonde asked if she was Hakan's fiancée. Lucina assured that she had no intention of returning. The girl assured that she would give birth to a healthy child, Hakan. The blonde said that she would be glad to become the queen of Tayar. The king asked if the girl knew what she would have to do as queen. The guy asked if she was ready to give her life for him and Tayar. Hakan clarified whether his wife was ready for this. The guy assured that he would not hug her until she was ready. Getting out of bed, the brunette recommended that Lucina get some rest. The king assured that he would sleep elsewhere. Lucina was left completely alone under the cold rays of the moonlight. The maids were talking about how the king left the Brian woman alone in the bedroom and left. The blonde reminded him that he didn't even try to look for her for several days. The girl said that she was sure that there was something special about the king's bride. The brunette asked if the girl's situation was any different from their ladies-in-waiting. Lowering her eyes, Lucina asked the maid to follow her. Horror flashed in the blonde's eyes when she heard that the king would most likely marry Garetta. The healer could not believe that Hakan would marry that woman. The girl realized that systems of criminal requisition were common in Tayara's kingdom. The blonde noticeably darkened as she listened carefully to the conversations of the maids. The girls said that they had a pretty good relationship. Lucina assumed that her fiancé had an unrequited love for Queen Garrett. The blonde realized that she had not seen her husband since that night. The healer tried to calm herself down with Titi's words. The maid tried to convince the lady that His Highness was outside the palace, and as soon as he returned he would definitely show himself to his wife. Lucina couldn't get the other maid's words out of her head. The healer realized that if her husband had once loved such a beautiful woman as Garrett, he would definitely not pay attention to her. The blonde realized that she acted very cowardly every day. Having burst into Mrs. Titi's room, she informed her that the king had finally returned to the palace. The maid invited the girl to go and meet him. The healer's eyes lit up when she heard that Hakan had returned. The girl turned around uncertainly when she heard footsteps behind her. The brunette admitted that she did not immediately recognize her because of the change in hair color. Bowing her head, Lucina greeted the woman with a trembling voice. The brunette asked the girl to repeat it, assuring that she did not understand anything. Having straightened her luxurious hair, Garrett said that she had heard rumors that the Brian girl behaved like a fool in bed. The girl assumed that because of this, the king got angry and left. The queen roughly took the blonde's hand, noticing that she was very skinny and pale. The woman assured that if she were constantly in bed with her king, she would not be able to stand it and would soon die. The darkened brunette recommended that Lucina leave at that very moment. She was amazed that the Brionian girl had come all this way without the determination to become a dragon queen. The healer became very nervous, because the woman was talking about her imminent death. Looking at her rival in surprise, Garrett asked if the king had told the girl that people die anyway. The brunette said that this was a well-known fact, and there was no need to speak so carefully. Lucina was a little taken aback, because Hakan had not told her anything about this. The smiling brunette told her rival that the Tayar Palace was a women's mausoleum. She assured that few people survived after receiving dragon energy. The brunette explained that if she wanted to survive in this place, then she should have dispelled her naive dreams. The king turned to Garrett. The girl raised her brown eyes with dissatisfaction and then bowed to greet Hakan. The guy noticed that the girls looked like they were talking. The brunette grinned and asked who would talk to someone who couldn't do it. The woman assured that she was only giving advice about life in the castle to the newcomer. The guy asked again in surprise. Garrett asked to call His Highness for this action. The brunette explained that not everyone can be a pet dragon. The woman explained that a weak person would simply waste his life on this. The brunette recommended that Hakan choose a suitable compatriot companion for this role. The king thanked the woman for her advice and said that he was able to figure it out himself. The brunette asked the bride to come closer. There was horror in the healer's eyes. When the guy found himself alone with his bride, he explained that he was busy for several days and could not visit her. The brunette asked if everything was fine with her. Hakan asked if his wife had what she wanted to say. The blonde hesitated a little, because she wanted to ask everything she didn't know. Having lowered her eyes, the girl began to mutter indistinctly, as she had many thoughts in her head that she could not put together. Looking at Lucina, the brunette assumed that she was scared by what he said last time. The king explained that being the dragon's chosen one is very dangerous. Hakan said that it was normal that she was not ready to give her life for him in the country. Smiling, the brunette said that from her point of view there was no strong difference between him and the perverted King Brian. The healer asked Hakan to listen to her. From her barely intelligible babble, the king realized that this was the first time he was not angry with her during their conversation. The girl nodded approvingly when he realized what she was trying to convey to him. The brunette clarified whether his bride was the only daughter of Baron Burke. The king asked why no one listened to her. The girl realized that she could not tell her chosen one the whole truth about her origin. In a voice trembling with fear, the healer explained that this happened because she was an idiot. Hakan suggested that his bride was an unloved child. The guy assumed that her behavior was due to the fact that she was going to be sent as a concubine to the old king. The brunette took a small strand of her hair and said that people were very strange. The guy assured that if he had such a beautiful daughter, he would idolize her and listen to her every word. The king assured that Lucina was very sweet. Hakan was returning at a leisurely pace from a walk in the garden. The knight informed his king that something had happened in his absence. The guy with panic in his voice said that Adar had escaped. The king said that he understood and assured that he would return as soon as he heard his voice. Having lowered his eyes, the brunette asked for forgiveness from Lucina, saying that he had to go. The girl could not get his words out of her head. The healer found it strange that instead of saying that she would die, he complimented her. The blonde felt that these words hurt her feelings even more. Peering into her reflection, the blonde realized that this was the first time her groom called her cute. The girl realized that she looked cute in Hakan's eyes. The healer peered carefully into her reflection, trying to contain her delight. Lucina asked Titi what it meant that she would receive the dragon's life force. The maid hesitated a little, because the king had to personally tell this to his bride. The girl assured that Lucina would give birth to a healthy heir to the dragon race. The girl became gloomy and asked whether she would die after giving birth. Without hiding the truth, Titi said that it was not uncommon for a mother to die during childbirth, especially if the child was from the dragon race. The healer suggested that Garrett was sure that she would die during childbirth. The brown-haired woman approached the lady and explained that giving life to a dragon child was not easy. The maid carefully handed the girl a white blanket. The girl explained that if someone gives life to the king's child, they can become a queen. She said that the great Queen Garrett was an ordinary servant, but she was able to give birth to the ruler's first child and became queen. The healer's eyes lit up, because she realized that she just needed to give birth to a child, and her origin would not be so important. Titi assured that the lady could also become queen. The girl is trying to support the blonde, and she assured that she would definitely be able to give birth to a wonderful child and become a queen. The maid suggested that the mistress wear sexy clothes next time. The girl assured that the lady would definitely defeat the king in this dress. Hakan stood with the knight near the bed of a woman who was clutching a small plush toy in her hand. The guy assumed that everything was fine now. Having lowered his eyes, the brunette suggested that she was shocked that her son had left the castle so suddenly, or gone to war again. Turan said the woman was afraid of losing another child. Idar was a wonderful queen who gave birth to 2 heirs and received the blessing of the god of fire. The woman was so shocked by the death of her eldest son that she soon lost her mind. The queen refused to acknowledge his death or bury him. For more than 10 years, the body of the deceased king could not get to Mezarul. Adar was afraid that her eldest son would be kidnapped, and all this time the king's body was kept in Kosik. The woman still believed that her eldest son would soon wake up and open his eyes. With a heavy sigh, Hakan said that it was time for them to return to the main palace. The knight asked if the gentleman would visit the palace. The brunette said that he was not in the mood for this. Turan assured that he would force all the women of the palace to fight among themselves. The assistant asked if the gentleman wanted to see the faces of his children. The brown-haired man advised to at least visit Miss Garrett. Turan recalled that many years ago the crown prince was killed in the war, and even the king, pursuing the killers of his son, fell. The guy explained that if something happens to the master, the great dragon blood will cease to exist. Sighing heavily, the king asked if he should have found a mate. Turan explained that there were rumors that the gentleman's mate was an ordinary person. The brown-haired man recalled that it was quite difficult for dragons to have children. He asked if he had any idea how bad it was. Turan recalled that the king understood this and spent the night with countless women, and then finally saw the face of his child, whom Garrett gave birth to. The assistant assured that the gentleman should do the same. Angrily, the king asked if he had to watch all these women die. Hakan reported that Garrett gave birth to his brother's child. The guy reminded me how many women have died trying to do this. The brunette explained that a girl had never been born, and the mother of another race could not withstand the power of the fire god and had never survived. The king asked how many women were to die. The brunette recalled that everyone said that sacrifices were necessary. Hakan admitted that he did not want to drag countless women into the bedroom. The king assured that he could not act in such a way. Turan recalled that it was the choice of women. The guy explained that so many came to the palace to give birth to an heir and become a queen. The brunette said that this was not the case, recalling that most of the women were simply sold to the kingdom. The king reported that at night he constantly heard women crying. The guy insisted that Garrett was the only woman his brother hugged without fear. The king said that his brother loved that woman. The assistant asked why Hakan did not marry her. The guy asked if the brunette had proposed to the gentleman to marry her. Turan reminded that you gave birth to one dragon, and the possibility of a second one was great. The assistant said that in this case, the Tayyar royal family would have a great chance. During his lifetime, the king said that immediately when he saw the maid, he realized that she would become his wife. The brunette claimed that he wanted to be buried with her, because he really loved his Garrett. The guy explained to his younger brother that he should meet such a woman. The king assured that the girl should love him and not want to get a title. Hakan coldly stated that he did not like Garrett. The assistant said that the brunette should at least hug Miss Lucina. Looking at the distant stars, the king asked why the dragon race takes so many women's lives for the sake of procreation. The brown-haired man explained that if there were no dragons, the neighboring kingdoms would have long ago destroyed the country and taken the beast people into slavery. Turan recalled that the kingdom of Brian treated them like cattle. The guy assured that genocide would begin, and they would destroy the entire Suan race. The assistant recalled that the neighbors were stopped only by the fact that there was a dragon race that subjugated fire. The guy assured that if it weren't for the dragons, this country wouldn't exist anymore. Tirana explained that when the first king was still alive, Hakan could behave so childishly. The assistant said that it could no longer be postponed. The brown-haired man asked the gentleman to go to Lucina and make heirs to the dragon race. The guy explained that this is the least he can do for Tayyar. The king asked what they would do if Lucina died in childbirth. Shrugging his shoulders, the assistant reminded him that he wanted to kill her, but in anger made her his bride. Turan said that he did not understand why the master cared so much about her. Shrugging his shoulders, the king admitted that he also did not know the reason for such concern. The guy involuntarily remembered the girl who saved his life. Hakan assumed that he cared for the bride because she looked like his savior. Trying to calm the gentleman down, the guy explained that if he had not brought her to the yard, she would have become concubine of King Brian and died. Turan reported that it was a known fact that the king's women did not live long. The guy explained that in any case, Lucina's fate was to die. The brown-haired man asked whether it would be better if the girl tried to have a child and become a queen. Turan reported that it was not such a bad ending for the blonde. The brunette asked if his fiancé thought the same. The assistant said that the king himself could have asked the girl. The guy explained that even if the girl had to die, she could give birth to a child and become a queen. He believed that there was no point in thinking about it, but in leaving everything in the hands of fate. Lucina was getting ready for bed. She was already in bed when Titi ran to the ladies' room and told her that the king had returned. A huge shadow appeared at the girl's door. The healer assumed that it was Hakan who came to her at such a late hour. The brunette clutched 2 glasses and a bottle of good wine in his hands. The guy asked the bride why she was still awake. The blonde turned to Hakan in a trembling voice. The king ordered the maid to leave the room. The healer muttered, saying that she had done a good job. Gently touching the face of his chosen one, the brunette said that he was once again convinced how lovely his wife was. The guy asked if she was so sad because he didn't come to the palace all this time. Confused, Lucina nodded uncertainly. The king promised to visit her more often in the future. He kissed the bride tenderly. The girl said she wanted more. Hakan was surprised that the bride stopped being afraid of him. The guy picked her up and gently laid her on the huge bed. The king asked if she was finally ready to give her life for the sake of him and the state. The blonde was not sure about this decision. The girl raised her head and asked her husband if he thought she was cute. A smile appeared on the king's face and he asked who dared to doubt this. Lucina admitted that it was the first time she had heard such words. Gently stroking her forehead, the king asked if all the people in Bryan were blind. A radiant smile appeared on the healer's face. Hakon gently rubbed his nose against her face. The blonde remembered the words of the maids, suggesting that he also kissed Garrett. The girl tried to push the king away by pronouncing the name of her rival. Lucina asked if he thought Garrett was also beautiful. The bride asked if Hakon liked her. Smiling, the guy reminded that at that moment he was with the bride, and not with the brunette. Lowering her eyes, the girl explained that there were rumors that Hakon and the woman would soon get married. Having become gloomy, the king asked his chosen one not to bother herself with this. Lucina explained that Hakon was in love with the queen in his youth. The guy suggested not to talk about the woman. The brunette said that if the bride continues this conversation, he will leave. The healer was sure that the guy liked Garrett. The blonde realized that her opponent couldn't even hold a candle to her. Lucina assumed that the groom was lying and she was not nice. Having closed herself off, the girl said that he liked Garrett more. The king asked what kind of nonsense the girl was talking about. The brunette asked if Lucina really wanted him to leave. The guy said that he would fulfill her wish. Hakon asked to say directly that she did not want to be his wife. Laughing, the brunette clarified whether the king left his bride alone and did not come to the palace after that. With shining eyes, the maid reported that the foreigner was afraid of Hakon. The girl was sure that the poor thing did not want to merge with someone like a dragon. The queen grinned and suggested that the brunette hated the foreigner. Garrett was sure that Hakon would soon stop liking her rival. Laughing, the woman admitted that she was surprised to learn that the king had gone to her. The brunette assured that there was no cause for concern. The maid claimed that after giving birth to a child, Garrett would become queen again. The girl recalled that their king adored Garrett since childhood and held back only because of guilt before the past ruler. The maid supported that he would certainly choose his mistress. Smiling, the brunette assured that she still remembered that scorching look of Hakon. The crown prince often looked at Garrett when she was near his older brother. The woman assured that after the death of the heir, Hakon could finally get her. The brunette was sure that all his feelings were due to guilt towards his brother. Garrett waited for the king to come to her soon and the palace would belong to her again. The brunette was sure that the ruler would soon become only hers. The woman reassured herself that from that very day Hakon no longer came to his foreign bride. Lucina sadly waited for her husband to come again. The maid tried to support her and assured her that the king was busy and would pay a visit again soon. The healer felt stupid. Lucina could not express the feelings that lurked in the depths of her soul. The girl realized that she had also angered Hakon, and it was no longer possible to continue like this. Looking at the maid with pleading eyes, the girl asked her to help her. Titi asked if the mistress wanted her to teach her how to speak. The blonde vaguely tried to explain that the words she wanted to say. The maid assumed that she wanted to tell her everything that was going on in her soul. The brown-haired woman suggested that the king's bride practice. The girl assured that Lucina needed to talk as much as possible. Titi admitted that when she was learning Tyarsky, she even talked to herself. The blonde clarified whether the maid was from this country. The brown-haired woman recommended that the mistress say it more confidently one more time. The girl's voice trembled with excitement, but she repeated this phrase more clearly. The brown-haired woman said that she was born in Lavandi. Titi said that in this way she would have the opportunity to pay for the education of her younger brothers, and she went to work as a maid in the palace. Lucina repeated the words without going into details. The girl asked the mistress to finish at least one sentence and not to rush. Smiling, the blonde asked how old the maid's brothers were turning this year. The girl said that her brothers would soon turn 13 and 15. She assured that they were very nice. The brown-haired woman asked whether the lady herself had brothers or sisters. Lucina said that she had an older brother, but he was not her own. The maid asked the mistress to repeat it again and slowly. The blonde shared that she had an older brother, although they were not close. Having interrupted learning a new language, the maid entered the room and reported that the queen had called her. The blonde got nervous and tried to understand why Garrett called her over. Lucina bowed before the queen. The foreigner's personal maid encouraged her, reminding her that they had already practiced. Titi asked Mrs. Lucina to pronounce her words clearly and speak more confidently. Blushing, the healer clarified whether the queen had called her. The brunette smiled and said that a banquet would be held soon. The woman explained that the festive clothes in the Barrion had already changed, and she assured that she just had one suitable thing lying around for this event. Garrett asked the girl to be sure to wear her gift. The blonde thanked her in a trembling voice. Lucina, noticing the black robe, realized that Brian was in mourning or Tayal was wearing different clothes. Titi wondered if the queen thought it was too much for a banquet. Grinning, Garrett said that she had specially chosen this outfit for the one who refused to sleep with the king. The brunette said that she felt sorry for the girl. The queen asked if this outfit was not beautiful. The queen explained that such clothes were worn by those who wanted to leave the palace as quickly as possible. The woman assured that this gift was a manifestation of sympathy and asked to accept it. The maid explained that the lady would appear like a ghost in these clothes. The brown-haired woman explained that everyone would come dressed up, and no one would notice her in this gloomy attire. Titi realized that the king had killed people living in the lady's hometown. The maid warned that Hakan might take it that the girl harbored a grudge against him. Our heroine realized that if Hakan really thought about this, she would never see him again. Lucina assumed that the chosen one really thought that she wanted to go home. The healer was afraid that he would order her to leave. The woman told the sisters that she was hungry. Adar held the dragon stuffed animal tightly in her hand. A little taken aback, the girl asked who she was. The brown-haired woman said that she had no idea, because she herself had just recently arrived at this palace. The queen turned to the girl and asked why she was wearing mourning clothes. Adar quickly ran up to the foreigner, suggesting that one of her friends had died and said that she was very sorry. The blonde assured that she wore this outfit for the banquet. Adar could not believe the girl's words, since clothes for a banquet should be luxurious. The maid assumed that she was a low-ranking maid of honor. The brown-haired girl realized that she looked really suspicious. Smiling, the woman assured that she could fix this outfit a little. The brown-haired woman asked who the woman was. The maid found this name painfully familiar. She assumed that this was the lady-in-waiting who served Queen Seongseongda. Having fallen to the floor, the woman said that she was very hungry and asked to hurry up. The blonde asked Titi to bring something tasty to her guest. Walking through the corridors, the queen reported that Adar had disappeared again. The maid assumed that she wanted to be alone and went to a separate palace. Grinning, the queen said that she would visit her rival in person, and asked not to tell the king about this, since he would worry too much. Smiling contentedly, Hakan's mother told the girls that she had eaten to her fill. Taking the mourning robe, the woman said that she was ready to begin alterations. Rita, without a drop of doubt, cut the gloomy dress with huge scissors. The maid began to get very worried because she doubted that everything would be fine. Looking up, the woman asked the blonde if she liked anyone. Rita explained that because of her appearance and hair, black suited the girl perfectly. The woman explained that she could only slightly alter the outfit. Fear appeared in the maid's eyes when she realized that the dress could turn into many rags. With a wink, the queen asked them to trust. The maid asked Garrett what they would do. Grinning, the brunette suggested simply leaving and letting her rival enjoy herself while she could. The queen understood that Seongseongdae was personally redoing the outfit and suggested that she would benefit from such activities. Clutching the blanket tightly, Lucina asked how someone could wear something like that to a banquet. Trying to calm the lady down, the brown-haired woman assured that the dress could not be returned. The maid assured that now her outfit looked much more impressive. Rita reported that she was hungry again, and she asked me to bring more food. The healer asked how it was possible to wear such a thing. The girl recommended that the lady remove the bedspread. Lucina looked at herself and realized that her outfit for the event was too revealing. Tehran ran a special stick over the huge musical instrument. Light melodies flew in the air and the ladies-in-waiting danced with pleasure. The king noticed that his bride was late. The servant asked if he should go get the girl. Garrett assumed that His Highness was embarrassed. The woman assumed that the blonde was afraid that Hakan would want to share her bed again. The queen asked why the girl was late again. Raising a glass of wine, the guy asked to tell Lucina that she didn't have to come and stay in her room. The queen noticed that His Highness was not in the mood at all, and deftly threw her luxurious cape off her shoulders. The woman assured that because of this she would dance especially for the great King Tayar. Tehran noticed that Queen Garrett, as usual, danced incomparably. The girl was a little taken aback when she was informed that she was prohibited from entering the banquet hall. The knight explained that only those wearing outfits from the former queen could enter. Trying to defend Mrs. Titi explained that they simply slightly modified the clothes Garrett proposed. The guy was delighted with the attractiveness of the king's bride. He realized that the former queen obviously would not like this. The brown-haired man understood that in this outfit the Brian girl was many times superior to Garrett. The knight realized that he could not let her in, since Hakan should only look at Garrett that evening. Pushing the maid away, the man ordered the guests to leave. The brown-haired man reassured himself that the blonde was indifferent to his highness, and there was nothing wrong with his actions. Frowning, the knight said that the entrance was closed if they were wearing prohibited clothing. The maid was confused, because if the lady did not come to the banquet hall, then the king could misunderstand her. Noticing a small bird, the blonde hoped that it was a fairy and that he would help. Hakan looked at the queen carefully, remembering his childhood. The brother compared his wife to a red poppy. The guy assured that if you get caught in the net of this flower, you can't get out and you can only die. The king was sure that one could only dissolve in such a flower. The guy realized that Raken had been a role model all the time before his death. The king was a great warrior with the title of lord who united the Tyar into one. With pain in his heart, the brunette realized that Raken was no longer alive with them. The guy remembered how he admired his brother and wanted to be just like him. Hakan dreamed of the same weapon, wife, and throne. From a young age, the guy imagined how he sat on the throne of the king, and everything that belonged to his brother would become his. The brunette assumed that the accident occurred because of this desire of his. Raken, having received several arrows in the torso, began to quickly bleed while in the arms of his younger brother. The king finally only longed to see his wife. Turan convinced the brunette that he should become the king of Tyar, since he was the only dragon. The assistant argued that the master should share a bed with Garrett, and then another dragon cub would be born and he would marry her. Hakan realized that the words about sincere feelings were just a pathetic lie. The king asked the girl if she really loved Raken. The guy asked the woman not to force herself and promised to find the one who would become his queen. Pressed close to Hakan's massive torso, the girl assured that she loved Raken as a king and wanted to give birth to his child for the good of the country. Garrett assured that as a man she only loved a brunette. The brunette threw off her light robe from her shoulders, revealing sexy lingerie. The woman clarified whether Hakan wanted her. Garrett pressed herself against his torso and said that they could do this right now, and she promised to give him a strong and healthy child. The guy put his hand on his forehead because his head was very dizzy from those memories. With excitement, Turan asked if everything was all right with his highness, and he wanted to get rid of these unpleasant memories forever. The doors opened and soon the blonde entered the hall. A light wind blew through her silver hair, which resembled the light of the moon. Looking at his beloved, the king realized that she looked like a goddess who had descended to him straight from the moon. The brunette's face turned red from embarrassment. It seemed to Hakan that moonlight was falling on the girl. The brunette realized that his head had stopped hurting. The guy gently whispered his beloved's name. Raising her eyes to the bird, Lucina asked for help. Hookah distracted the guard's attention. A pile of bird droppings fell into the guard's eyes, blinding him for a while. The titmouse began to furiously attack the brown-haired man. Titty looked at the mistress and invited her to quickly go through the gap. Soon our heroine stood in front of her husband, who was sitting on the throne. The girl hoped that the training had not been in vain and tried to speak confidently. Lucina said that good luck would come with the great King Tyara. The brunette doubted whether he knew this girl, since his fiancée had always been intimidated and insecure. Wiping the remnants of the bird's surprise from his face, the brown-haired man said that he missed the girls because of the bird. Gloomily, Garrett asked the knight what kind of outfit the blonde was wearing when she entered the celebration. The guy asked the queen for forgiveness. He explained that he was stopping them, but got distracted for a moment. The king noticed that his wife was late. Bowing, Titi asked for forgiveness, explaining that an incident had happened due to which they were late. Hakan asked in surprise about the incident and asked the maid to wait a little. The brunette gently took Lucina's hand. The guy noticed that bruises were clearly visible on the bride's arms. Looking closely at the maid, the king asked what happened. The brown-haired woman said that they were not allowed into the banquet hall because the dress code was violated. The girl said that the guards blocked their exit and injured Lucina with a spear. Looking at his beloved in surprise, the brunette asked what the maid was talking about. Hakan addressed the queen dowager. Having hit the guard, the woman assured that she had sewn this outfit herself. Garrett asked how he prevented the girls from entering. Bowing, the brown-haired man asked for forgiveness for his ignorance. Smiling tenderly, the woman assured that there had been some kind of misunderstanding and promised to teach the guard a lesson. The king said that she should not do this under any circumstances. Hakan asked his assistant to bring him a sword. With rage in his amber eyes, the guy asked how he dared to ignore the queen and also hit the king's beloved. Hakan explained that the brown-haired man challenged him and dishonored the Tyar kingdom. The brunette said that the guy would pay for this with his life. In a trembling voice, Lucina told her lover that she was fine. The king explained that no one except him could even touch her with a finger. The brunette informed everyone present that ignoring Lucina was challenging him. Hakan said that he was ready to kill for this. The king held the blonde tightly to his massive chest. A slight blush appeared on the girl's face. Falling to his knees, the knight begged for mercy. The brown-haired man begged Garrett to say something. The guy claimed he did it for the Queen Dowager. The woman asked His Highness why he had to spoil such a wonderful banquet. Looking closely at Garrett, the guy asked if this was her order. The queen was a little taken aback, because since the day Lucina refused him, he had not even approached her. The brunette was sure that the king had lost interest in her. Garrett felt how at the sight of the blonde he came to life, but rejected her. The woman understood that the king should not have known about this. The queen assured that she would not interfere with Hakon's companion. The brunette explained that latecomers could ruin the atmosphere of the holiday. Garrett assured that the insolent acted without permission, and asked the great king to punish him. The brunette asked Lucina to close her eyes and ears. The guy asked his beloved to open her eyes after he spoke. The knight begged for mercy, but soon his head was separated from his body with a slight movement of the sword. Blood quickly covered the floors. When the king sheathed his sword, Turan ordered the insolent body to be burned. Taking his beloved in his arms, Hakan said that the banquet was over. The guy said that he wanted to relax alone with Lucina and asked not to disturb them. The Queen Dowager's face twisted with anger. The woman was furious that Hakon chose his rival over her. After the king carried his beloved along the long corridors, he announced that it was all over. The guy realized that Lucina was scared, because a man died before her eyes. The brunette asked if the girl was scared. The blonde said in a trembling voice that his assumptions were correct and thanked him. The bride asked if Hakan did this for her sake. The brunette asked for forgiveness because he drank a lot and his mind was clouded. The guy explained that he wanted to apologize but put it off. The king remembered that he promised her to come to the palace more often, but he never kept his word. The brunette wanted to make peace with his bride, and was afraid to say that if she merged with him, she might die. The guy was afraid that Lucina would hate him. The king looked at the situation objectively. He realized that he had forcibly brought the girl into his kingdom and was going to put her life in danger. Hakan was afraid that his beloved would want to return, and then he would lose her forever. The blonde assumed that she made him look bad because of her behavior. Lowering her eyes, Lucina assured that she wanted to meet him and apologize, but she was afraid to say something stupid and anger him. Having lowered his beloved to the ground, the guy assured that he did not want to scare her. He said that if she was still afraid to go to bed with him, then he could take her to the palace. The king assured that he would not be angry. Awkwardly touching his hand, the blonde assured that she wanted to be with him. Lucina clarified that she was still not sure that she was ready to give her life for him. The foreigner assured that first she would like to know more about her husband. Lucina said that after that she would decide whether she was ready to die for him. Laughing, the guy said that the chosen one was right in saying that they knew little about each other. The brunette said that he had no idea how wise and brave his Lucina could be. The king noticed that on this day his wife was indeed dazzlingly beautiful. Hakan assured that he forgot about the others as soon as the girl entered the banquet hall. The king said that in his eyes there was only her. In a trembling voice, Lucina asked whether he liked this dress. He placed his massive hands on his fragile shoulders. And tell him that he only liked her. And she asked me not to wear such clothes again. The brunette explained that he did not want other men to see her like this. The king explained that in such an outfit his beloved could only appear in front of him. Hakon absolutely loved how her black color made her fair skin shine. The guy kissed Lucina tenderly. Noticing the slight trembling that passed through her body, he asked if she liked it. The blonde explained that on this day she just wanted to talk to him. The girl actively gesticulated, trying to get her point across. The brunette picked up 2 silver glasses with a gold frame and bright red rubies. Having poured a little drink, the guy asked his beloved to sit next to him. Hakan asked what she wanted to know about him. In Lucina's small hand, the glass of the intoxicating drink seemed simply huge. The girl tried not to be nervous and speak as confidently as during training with Titi. Cold drops then slowly flowed from her face from excitement. The blonde asked how old her lover was. The girl drank the entire glass in a few sips and repeated her question again. The king assured that by human standards he was about 27 years old. The blonde remembered her maid's advice and decided to continue the conversation. Lucina asked her lover what he liked most. The king assured that he liked her most of all. A little angry, the blonde explained that she was talking about things, hobbies and alcohol. To calm down, the girl poured another glass into herself. The king suggested that his lover liked Tayar wine. The guy offered to pour a little more into her glass. The foreigner was delighted with the sweetish taste of alcohol. With every sip she drank, the blonde became calmer. Hakan noticed that his beloved drinks well. The guy recalled that he only learned this about her. The brunette said that he also wanted to know a lot about her. The king sat closer to the bride and poured a little more wine into a luxurious glass. Hakan asked if she would answer honestly. A little embarrassed, the girl said that she needed to listen first. The brunette invited Lucina to play a game. A barely noticeable smile appeared on the guy's face, firmly clutching a glass of alcohol in her hand. The girl clarified what the rules of this game were. The guy smiled and poured her some more wine. The king explained that the main rule was that you need to answer the questions asked by your interlocutor. Hakan explained that if someone cannot answer, he drinks a glass of wine. He suggested asking questions one by one. Lowering her eyes, the blonde admitted that she liked this idea. She struggled to hold the filled silver glass. The guy said that he would start the game first and thought for a few moments. He looked sternly at his beloved and asked what kind of men she liked. The king asked Lucina to approach the answer thoroughly. The brunette began to provide many examples of the answer. The girl assumed that Hakan was good, smart, rich, and sensitive. The foreigner was a little confused, because she didn't know how to correctly formulate her thought. The girl poured another glass of wine into herself to express everything she liked about the king. Hakan was surprised that this was her secret, and asked her to ask the next question. The blonde asked which girls were his type. Hakan said that he liked girls like her. The foreigner asked me to answer more specifically, saying that they don't play like that. The brunette explained that he wanted to meet someone who would love him as a person, and not as an opportunity to get a title. The guy said that now it was his turn. The king asked if she could talk like that. The brunette asked to speak openly next time if there was something new for her here. Lucina said that initially it was like that, but she trained for a long time. The bride explained that she wanted to talk to him and therefore practiced conversation. The blonde said that Titi helped her a lot with this. The foreigner said that she did not want to look like a fool in his eyes. Gently stroking his wife's silky hair, Hakan praised her efforts. The guy explained that it is much better to train in practice so that everything works out well right away. The brunette was sure that the bride had put a lot of effort into this. For a long time, the king was sure that his bride was timid and shy, but now he saw confidence and courage in her. Hakan assumed that the little girl who saved him many years ago became his bride. The guy suggested that she was originally brave, but because of the violence she turned timid. The king asked if anyone beat Lucina as a child. The brunette asked if she ever ran away from the palace when she was in Berg. The girl became very nervous, doubting whether she should tell him the truth. Lucina was afraid of being rejected due to the fact that she was an illegitimate child. The blonde reassured herself that the title didn't matter here. The foreigner was afraid that Hakan might feel hostility and disgust if he found out that she was the daughter of an unknown woman. The blonde said that now it was her turn to ask a question, because the guy could not formulate the question correctly. The king said that he was very sorry and asked his beloved to ask. Lucina asked what he thought about her. The guy explained that he really liked her. The king assured that he did not want to hurt her, and wanted her to become his queen and spend the rest of her life with him. Hakan assured that the desire to hug her came every night when he fell asleep. The brunette asked his wife what she thought about him. Looking at her reflection in the glass, the girl admitted that sometimes she was scared. Lucina clarified that it wasn't that she didn't like him. The girl assured that she was now ready to sleep with him. The foreigner said that she was delighted with the beauty of his body, and was embarrassed at the very sight. The blonde admitted that she was afraid that he would sleep with someone else. The girl said that Hakan should not do this with anyone but her. Lucina offered to wear this dress only in front of him in return. The king took her hand, pressed her to his muscular body and kissed her passionately. Confusion appeared on the girl's face. The brunette, pressing her to himself, promised that he would only be with her in the future. Hakan did not understand that he could not restrain himself forever around such a brave and honest girl. The king said that he had something to say to the bride. The guy warned that the guardian dragons had powerful fire energy, and it was difficult for women of other races to cope with it. Hakan explained that if a woman has a dragon child, most often the mother gets sick and dies. The brunette explained that in rare cases, the bride may lose her breath even when the bodies merge. Hakan admitted that at first she thought that there was no need to tell people from other countries whom he was going to destroy about this. The guy said that from the first meeting he began to fall in love with her more and more. And he began to have thoughts that, having learned about this, the girl would try to leave him. The king apologized for having to tell her about this. The brunette promised that if Lucina rejected him, he would not raise a hand against her. The guy offered to send her back to Berk. Hakan assured that he would accept the bride's decision if she decided to carry a dragon child at the risk of her own life. The brunette gently whispered his lover's name, but she did not answer. Hakan gently lifted his beloved and realized that his body had fallen asleep from the alcohol and warmth. The king carefully laid his beloved on the bed and carefully covered her with a soft blanket. Lucina said his name in her sleep. The brunette didn't know what he could do with her, and he simply kissed her tenderly on the forehead. Garrett asked if the king had been in the same bedroom with her rival all night. Lowering her eyes, the brown-haired woman assumed that the great king had merged with that girl. The maid assured that until that moment, he had always left the foreigner alone at night. The queen was furious, because until that moment not one girl had stayed in Hakan's bedroom all night. She was alarmed that this was the first time this had happened.